To matters politics, it's now 2 years since President William Ruto was sworn into office as the Kenya's 5th president. He assumed power at a time when Kenya was beset by rising food and fuel prices, high unemployment and a worrying debt burden. During the election campaign, Ruto promised to fix an economy affiliated by corruption and ineptitude. He promised to entrench good governance and place the poor at the center of the economic policy. But after 2 years, he has done the completely opposite, with the country's youngest adults, Gen Zs, chanting slogans, Ruto must go. What will happen if the president decides to resign? What do the constitutions say? Let's check it out. Overthrowing a government can have far-reaching consequences, affecting the stability and well-being of a nation. As the youth in Kenya are calling for President William Ruto to step down,
tunasema Ruto must go.
It is crucial to understand the potential outcomes of such a move. As protests intensify in Kenya, calls for President William Ruto to resign grow louder. But what would happen if he decides to step down? If Ruto resigns, Kenya could face a significant political vacuum. According to Article 149 of the Kenyan Constitution, the president must nominate a new deputy within 14 days, and the National Assembly has 60 days to approve the appointment.
William Samoei Ruto.
A sudden leadership change could exacerbate the current unrest, leading to further instability. Economically, Ruto's resignation could worsen Kenya's already precarious financial situation, with a public debt exceeding $80 billion. The government relies on borrowing to sustain operations. If Ruto steps down, the new leadership may struggle to manage this debt without increasing taxes, which have already sparked further violence. Increased borrowing could hinder economic growth and lead to higher interest rates, further straining businesses.
Biblia ilishuka, lakini kama ilikaa juu, zakayo yako juu, uchuru iko juu, kila kiko.
Additionally, Ruto's resignation might escalate public protests, with many citizens already dissatisfied with his government's handling of economic issues and corruption. A leadership change could embolden protesters to demand more accountability. The youth are increasingly vocal about their frustrations.
Ruto! Ruto!
A resignation could serve as a rallying point for their demands and economic instability. The governance structure could be disrupted without a formal cabinet until a new one is appointed. Essential services and decision-making processes may be hindered, complicating the governance ability to function effectively. A lack of leadership can stall important initiatives and policies affecting everyday life for citizens.
I am going to make sure that we have a lean government that responds to the reality of where we are as a country.
A leadership change may exacerbate divisions within Kenyan society, especially if the new leadership fails to address the issues that fueled Ruto's unpopularity, such as corruption and economic inequality. If the new leadership does not resonate with the people's need, it could lead to further polarization.
These MPs that are taking the Kenya's money for granted, they should be recalled back according to the constitution.
Ruto's resignation could impact Kenya's international relations. The stability of the new government will be closely scrutinized by international lenders and partners, potentially affecting future aid and investment. International partners often reassess their commitments during leadership changes, which can have long-term implications for the country. Overthrowing a government can have severe consequences, including political instability, economic disruption, and the erosion of trust in institutions. As the youth in Kenya call for President William Ruto to step down, it is crucial to consider However, if the president is impeached from office, a member of the National Assembly, supported by at least a third of all members, may move a motion for impeachment on the ground of gross misconduct and violation of the provision of the Constitution or any other law where there are serious reasons for believing that the president has committed a crime under national and international law or gross misconduct. If the motion under Clause 1 is supported by at least 2/3 of all members of the National Assembly, the Speaker shall inform the Speaker of the Senate of that resolution within 2 days, and the President shall continue to perform the functions of the office pending the outcome of the proceeding required by Article. Meanwhile, 16 years ago, Kenya made headlines not because of its athletes' prowess, but instead electoral violence. In most shocking incident, on the eve of 2008, dozens of people, including children, were burned alive in a church. Those burned had sought refuge in Kiamba Church after fleeing Kimuri Farm 3 kilometers away following clashes between opposition and incumbent supporters. The victims were mostly Kikuyu in an area predominantly occupied by the Kalenjin, who consider the North Rift their ancestral land.
Kama muko na shida na Wakikuyu, hamuko na shida na Wakikuyu kuliko sisi wa Kalenjin.
The trigger for the violence was their perceived support for the different presidential candidate. The Kalenjin largely supported Raila Odinga running on the Orient Democratic Movement ticket, and the Kikuyu largely supported Mwai Kibaki of the Party of National Unity.
Msichague hii watu, mnakumbuka yale yalitendeka, kwani yeye mwenyewe alikuwa wapi na yeye alikuwa katikati ya hiyo vita?
The Electoral Commission had declared the late Mwai Kibaki the winner after an unusual prolonged period of counting and tallying of the presidential results. He had been sworn in despite opposition protests and widespread concerns about the validity of the counting and tallying process. In the post-electoral violence that ensued, more than 1,300 people were killed and over 500,000 others internally displaced. Individuals and groups allied to both PNU and ODM respectively, as well as the security services, committed crimes against humanity, and the International Criminal Court ICC indicated 6 individuals, including former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, his deputy William Samoei Ruto, and 4 others. The cases against President William Ruto and Kenyatta were ultimately suspended due to what the court said was witness interference.
Sasa mimi sijui, rais ni Mkikuyu, naibu ni Mkalenjin, na tumechaguliwa na Wakikuyu na Wakalenjin.
Meanwhile, August 1st, 1982 will remain a dark day in Kenya's history. It will also be the day said to have changed the life of retired President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi forever.
Mimi nikiwa amiri jeshi la majeshi yetu ya Kenya, nataka niseme kwamba yale yaliyotokea leo asubuhi kwa muda mfupi ililetea wananchi wasiwasi mwingi.
This was after a group of disgruntled Air Force servicemen seized key positions in the country's capital, Nairobi, and other towns, and called on the masses to help them overthrow what they termed as a corrupt, armed, oppressive regime.
Na nilipojua kwamba ni Air Force, ni kutoa yeye kwa nyumba, kwa sababu Air Force hawangeweza kufika huko kwa magari ama kwa miguu ama kwa njia nyingine japokuwa pengine na ndege. Na Air Force kulikuwa na ndege aina 2 kubwa ya vita, aina ya F5 ambayo ilikuwa na nyuki, na aina ya Strike Master ambaye walikuwa Kisumu. Mmoja alikuwa anafanya kama adui, mwingine alikuwa kama askari wa Kenya. Kwa hivyo wote haikujulikana hali yao, lakini Wananyuki tulijua kwamba walikuwa wamesha kamata mateka maofisa ambaye ndio wanarusha ndege kama marubani, walikuwa wameshakamata na kuweka mateka. Pia wale wa Isili walikuwa wameshaweka mateka. Wale wa Kisumu walikuwa na Meja Mutai, na Meja Mutai alikataa.
On that fateful morning, veteran journalist Leonard Mambo Mbotela was whisked in the dead of the night from his Ngara house to the studio to read the infamous radio announcement at gunpoint. According to Mbotela, relentless gunfire was heard moments after the announcement across Nairobi.
I was really scared. I was scared stiff. Is this the Kiswahili service studio? I said, yes. Are you sure? I said, yes. I've worked here. I know it is. So they told me that they are going to read some statement and that they wanted me to read.
Students from the University of Nairobi were also heard chanting slogans supporting the rebel soldiers. The streets of Nairobi became a battleground, with some people taking advantage, starting to loot.
It reached a stage where we got civilians involved. And unfortunately, we had already prosecuted the servicemen who had a knowledge of the coup. We did not have enough witnesses. And so that is when General Mulinga asked me to draft a letter to the president seeking for a solution on what to do with this. And the president, I think through his cabinet, decided to detain them.
Mbotela further narrated how he was forced by rebel soldiers to read several other announcements after intervals. These went on for hours. Meanwhile, the rebel soldiers had moved in University of Nairobi in the night, woke them up, asking them to join them in their quest. Many did so, but paid with their lives.
Mzee wasn't perturbed at all. He seemed to have had some knowledge of it.
6 hours after the soldiers had taken control, Brigadier Mahamoud Mohammed launched an attack and overpowered the rebels, retaking the broadcasting house.
So I thought the best way is to die as a man or as a soldier.
An announcement immediately followed stating that Moi's regime was still in power and terming the soldiers as drunk youths without plans to overthrow the government. Hours later, President Moi addressed the nation from State House in Nakuru before traveling to Nairobi by road.
Niseme kwamba yale yaliyotokea leo asubuhi.
The 6-hour coup had a cost on human life. Silent law queues formed outside the city mortuary as relatives sought to identify the dead. For Maisha Prime, Maisha Television, Amesh Msimbi.